the regime in Russia is really not tolerating dissent in terms of dissent from this war. It's not allowing much wiggle room, shall we say, for people who are willing to come out and stand in opposition against it.
Now, the Russian journalist famous for staging an on-air protest against the invasion of Ukraine, is said to be on the run tonight after escaping house arrest while facing up to 10 years in prison if found guilty of disseminating fake news about the Russian armed forces. Marina Ovsyannikova has been put on the Kremlin's wanted list after her ex-husband reported her and her 11-year-old daughter missing, with state-run news outlet Russia Today reporting that she had fled with her daughter and their whereabouts were simply unknown. Well, Dr. Jenny Mathers is a senior lecturer in international politics at Aberystwyth University and an expert on Russian politics and security. And Dr. Jenny joins me now. Good evening.
Good evening.
This is quite an incredible turn to this story, Jenny, because of the detail which suggests that her husband actually reported her missing.
That's right. It's hard to know where to begin, really, to unpick the difficulties and the complexities of a story, because she was the one back in March who held up a sign, a poster that she made behind a news broadcaster during a live broadcast in Russia, saying no to war. And she dramatically denounced the war. She left the Channel One, which is one of the main broadcasters in Russia, briefly went to Germany, and then came back to Russia. She's been fined. She's been, under house arrest, threatened with jail, all kinds of things. And now it looks as though, she and her daughter have left, but left the husband behind. And he's now apparently turning her into the authorities, or at least telling them that she's gone. So, yeah, it's quite an extraordinary story.
Well, she was seen as a hero to opposition figures in Russia and to many international journalists who were reporting on it. Do we know, are there major concerns for her safety tonight, or do we think that she has found somewhere to stay away from the Russian authorities?
Well, at the moment, we just don't know. I mean, there's no information about her whereabouts, except that she's reported to be missing. I think she's an interesting character because she's actually provoked quite a bit of controversy among some Ukrainians who said, well, actually, she's been treated quite gently by the Russian authorities. They could have treated her much more harshly, considering the high-profile nature of her protest, the fact that her poster was seen by millions of people, whereas people who simply stand on the street corner and hold a poster which might only be seen by a half a dozen people can get bundled off to jail quite quickly. So, there has been some skepticism expressed, I think, about how much sympathy we need to be expressing for her, especially when she landed a very cushy job in Germany for a while. So, yeah, she's quite a controversial figure. But I think what it shows us really is that the regime in Russia is really not tolerating dissent in terms of dissent from this war. It's not allowing much wiggle room, shall we say, for people who are willing to come out and stand in opposition against it, whether it's the relatively mild or lenient treatment that she's had in terms of house arrest and fines, or whether it's much more punitive sentences of years in prison. Nevertheless, it's quite a brittle, fragile sense that the Moscow regime is at the moment, just not tolerating any sort of criticism.
Yeah, that's why I find her character so intriguing, because of actually her movements this year, where she has gone from Russia to Germany, back to Russia. Why do we think that the authorities, the Kremlin, have treated her with such perceived lenience?
Well, this is the big question. There's always been some questions around how genuine some protesters are, how genuine some opponents are against the regime, and whether the regime tolerates certain people or whether it even puts them up to be opposition figures in some way, to sort of take some of the steam out of protests. So, there's a lot that we just don't know, I'm afraid, about her particular case. I mean, she came back to Russia apparently because of a custody battle with her husband over the children and so on. So there's a mixture of political and personal motives going on here for sure.
Jenny, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us tonight. Dr. Jenny Mathers, the Senior Lecturer in International Politics at Aberystwyth University, expert on Russian politics and security.